ask members of the peer staff to be here and explain that bill to me, and you also. So Matthew, I believe you're up.
Bill 538, talking about Harrison Waterway District. Did a review on them last year, and we have two legislative recommendations. The first one is on page 2 of the bill. Basically, when counties exit, and so far 5 of the 15 counties have exited the district, they are required to pay an exit fee, and that has been determined to be a portion of the liabilities of the district. This would require the counties to exit at the end of the fiscal year instead of being able to do it during the middle of the year. And the reason for this is it would keep the district from having a contract for an additional audit. If they do it at the end of the year, they could use the audit they're already required to do. The second recommendation, or the second legislative change, was on page 13. Part of our review dealt with review of the district's capital infrastructure project. Well, they have a capital infrastructure plan. It's just sort of a laundry list of about $25 billion of projects with no prioritization and implementation planning. Statute requires them in their enabling legislation to do a prioritization and implementation plan over 5 years where they prioritize the projects that they're going to do. They have not done that plan. They do the elbow plan, but it doesn't go through the detail of prioritizing the projects they plan to implement. That's supposed to be submitted to the Board of Supervisors of each county. This would require them to do that plan and additionally submit it to the chairs of the State Appropriation and House Appropriation.
That's an explanation of the bill. If you have questions, I'm sure Matthew will be glad to answer. Any questions? If not, do I have a motion? Sufficient to pass the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next is House Bill 768. This bill deals with the State Personnel Board when some agency is asking for an exemption. And again, staff is going to be here to explain it. Ray, I believe you are going to explain this one to us.
Yes, sir, I am. So House Bill 768 it comes out of a follow-up that we did on legislative assistance requests that we had related to assessing the impact of exemptions that are granted by the legislature of state agencies. We did a follow-up report to that. And so this bill piggybacks on the language that y'all adopted back in the 21 session that added some additional reporting requirements for people that have those exemptions that are granted to them. This would take that one step further. So part of the problem that we found was that when you ask people, well, how well did you do with your exemption? There was no standard to put it against. So we're asking that if y'all consider this in the future, for anybody who wants to ask for an exemption, they have to give y'all essentially a roadmap to tell y'all what problems that they're facing, that they need exemptions for, how they plan to address it, and how much they expect that to cost. Additionally, if that exemption includes an exemption from the minimum qualifications that the State Personnel Board has for those positions, that the agencies would also be required to report within that information that has to be reported on an annual basis, the number of staff that they hired that did not meet the minimum qualifications, and evidence that shows that those hires are performing as well as somebody who would have met the minimum qualifications. And those are the two recommendations that we're asking of.
So basically, if an agency wants to remove itself from personnel board requirements, they must tell you their plan up
They
front.
just tell y'all.
Okay.
It's required that they provide to y'all in writing and to the State Personnel Board a roadmap of what they plan on doing with that exemption. If you're going to give it to them, they give you a roadmap on what they're going to do, how they plan on using that exemption to make the agency better.
Questions to the committee? Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So an agency wants to be exempt. They turn in this information. Do we approve it, or does the personnel board approve it, or can they just turn in anything and after they've turned it in, they're good to go?
Okay, so this information is to be presented to y'all and to the State Personnel Board. It's essentially there to help you as the legislature make a decision on whether to grant them this exemption. They're going to tell you, if you give us this authority, here's the problems that we're facing. We're having turnover issues. We can't hire a number of staff. workers that aren't doing the job that we need them to do. There should be some problem that they're trying to fix. It shouldn't be good enough to say, we need an exemption because we have problems.
But after they turn in this document, is there subsequent approval required by the legislature or by the person?
There's no written approval that's required. The approval would be y'all granting the exemption they're asking for. Or not granting.
So we would get this, the legislature would get this document, we could either approve it or not approve it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That would,
So to clarify, the legislature always has to approve an exemption
yes,
from
sir.
the personnel board.
Yes.
So this is just backup to why we're going to do
Right.
that.
If y'all are going to grant somebody that authority, the state personnel board is there for a reason. Y'all created them to do a job. And if somebody wants to be out from under them, that's an exemption. It's a special case. So they should be able to show you ahead of time why they need it and how they're going to use it. So that we then, when we get done, because they're required to report their actions during that exemption. And so when they get done and they make those reports after the exemption, we should be able to take what they did and hold it up to the roadmap to be able to see that they did what they said they were going to do. That they didn't go off on some wild, hair.
Other questions? Do I have a motion? Power sufficient to pass the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is House Bill 540. This is a proposed strike all and this changes the way that public service, I'm sorry. It's the professional and professional service required by the Department of Finance and Administration to conduct solicitations of those agencies. This is going to be a test for state government of centralizing certain procurements. And Ted, I believe you're here to try to explain the bill to us.
Over about the past 25 years, the legislature has taken in overseeing personal services contracts. Back before 1997, agencies could pretty much go out and contract with whomever they wish, so unless they had some specific statutory restrictions built into their own law. In 1997, y'all created a personal services contract review board under the personnel board and gave them considerable authority to oversee certain contracting, particularly for contracts over $75,000 in value. In 2017, y'all moved that function over to the Public Procurement Review Board, which is an adjunct to the Department of Finance Administration, which has certain oversight over various commodities and equipment purchases also. What this does is take an extra additional step in oversight. If adopted, strike all would provide that the Department of Marine Resources, NDA, MEMA, Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks, solicitation for personal services would have to be conducted by DFA. Until, right, look if they're contracting with something over a firm for over $75,000. Prior to this time, those agencies did their own proposals and then brought them to PPRB for approval. One of the reasons for looking at this or maybe moving in this direction and running this pilot, if you will, is that over time, here let's look at personal services contracting. And it's noted that in many cases, agencies have a difficult time doing things correctly. They can their proposals get back. In some cases, agencies have had their proposals not approved, and they used their emergency authority under statute to go ahead and enter into a contract. And what we're trying to do here with the pilot is see that these four agencies, the DFA, could do a better job of running the procurement process efficiently and effectively. Wouldn't shut the agencies out. They would collaborate with the DFA staff, much the same way they collaborate with the IPS staff on major procurements. There's another amendment in here that deals with certain practices of agencies regarding requiring that a bidder on a service contract provide a local area office. And this has raised some concerns with folks. So what this would do if adopted would provide the Public Procurement Review Board an adopt a rule that would prohibit any agency that's contracting from requiring that their contractor establish an office in any municipality or locality. It would provide, however, that in the event that it is essential that they have an office in the area, that if that vendor is selected, the EFA and the Public Procurement Review Board could work with them on setting up within a reasonable amount of time after approval of a location of a local office. This and the strike all amendment also would place a 3-year repealer on this. Here staff thinks that this is once again, another incremental move in the area of personal services contracting to bring better accountability to the system. In 2024, these 4 agencies would be under Public Review Board and DFA for their $75,000 and greater contracts. We'll see how it works. Chairman wants to put a repealer on this. Certainly it'd be possible for you to go review it before you all decide whether or not you want to reenact this. If you thinks this is once again a good move in the direction of accountability.
Thank you, Ted. It's a test for agency to begin with. It will determine whether the state might move forward or not. The other thing we have to look at is this does not cut out any professional services firms. It even enlarges the scope to possibly including more national firms to do this. But under the law, they would have to, if needed, create an office in the state of Mississippi to handle the work that they're being contracted for. We do have a sunset in it of 3 years from beginning, so we can have a good test of whether the project works or not. Is that pretty well a summation of what you just said? Other questions from the committee? Anyone? Cheryl Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Booth. I just have a question on so I see the 3-year repealer in the second section there on lines 534 through 548. Is there another, should there be another repealer in this first section on 204 through 227, or am I missing?
Right, so there's a 3-year repealer in paragraph L.
Okay.
For the Mississippi portion, but I guess they did miss time.
Okay.
So if you want, we can.
And would you like to make that amendment to add it to that paragraph too?
First, to add the 3-year repealer to the first,
Yes.
to section 1 would be my amendment.
Okay. You heard the amendment. Questions? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that will be added. Other questions about the bill?
I just have a general question. How did we get to these 4 agencies?
Ted?
I had worked with DFA and talked about some. These generate a sufficient amount of work that it would be a good test for them. But it wouldn't be something that would be extremely burdensome. You wouldn't want to start with Medicaid, which is probably 90% of all the personal services contracting business we generate. So, and going over this, they think these would be good for us.
Because that was on a recommendation from DFA. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? If not, do I have a motion?
Auspicious do pass.
Move to adopt.
Do we? First move to strike all. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And now to the motion.
Auspicious do pass.
Strike all.
Strike all.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Motion carries. Next is House Bill 231. This is the Tobacco Education Prevention and Cessation Program, where we add fentanyl and drug abuse as prevention education to be taught by the Mental Health Department. This is an exact same bill to do the work of training people about the use of fentanyl and illegal drugs. We passed the bill. It was Senator Hickman's bill. We sent it to the House, and they have decided not to pass that version and have asked us to pass this version. I spoke to Senator Hickman. He was amenable to it. And so we come to you with this recommendation that we pass this bill, which is a clone of the bill that we passed. If there are no questions, we'll look for a motion. Motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is House Bill 985. This is the EMS Advisory Council Vision Bill. Basically, this bill revises the membership of the Emergency Medical Services Advisory Council. Y'all may be like me, we didn't even know we had one, but we do. It removes one representative from the Mississippi Department of Rehabilitative Services, one representative from the Firefighters Memorial Burn Association. It increases the number of EMT paramedics from 1 to 2, adds one representative from the Mississippi Association of Medical Services Educators Association. And you are correct, the number of board members stays the same. The only other change in the bill is designate the Mississippi Ambulance Alliance as the nominating entity for the 2 board members who are operators of ambulance services. Previously, there was no such nominating entity. It just rearranges the board. This came from the House as a recommendation to improve the board and bring it more up to date. Are there any questions? Senator Hobbs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One technical question is the name of that organization on line 54, the Mississippi Association of Emergency Medical Services Educators Association?
It is, and I was surprised by that as well, but it's because Mississippi Association of Emergency Medical Services modifies educators. So they are credentialed by MAEMS, and then they are their own association of credentialed educators.
We've got association in their name twice.
That's right.
Thank you.
Good question. Other questions? Do I have a motion?
Title sufficient to pass.
Title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is House Bill 809 regarding the executive director of the public utility staff, who removes the Public Service Commission from the process of appointing. This bill removes the requirement that the governor appoint the executive director of the public utility staff from a list of candidates submitted by the Public Service Commission. Instead, the governor would be able to nominate whomever he should choose. No other changes are made to the qualifications, functions, or salary of the executive director of MPUS. Are there any questions? Motion's title sufficient to pass. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is House Bill 1310, previously passed by the Elections Commission, I believe, today earlier. And I've asked if Senator Tate would be here to explain what this bill does for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several sections to this bill, so we'll just go by one at a time. Section 1 is going to allow for the Secretary of State to have a pilot program of auditing the procedures of elections in our counties. It's limited to only the 2023 and the 2024 general election. Secretary of State will randomly select 16 counties to be a part of this pilot. When they select the counties, there will be 16 counties, 4 in each of the 4 current congressional districts. They will select precincts that they will audit. Those precincts will be 25% of the total precincts, or no more than 5 precincts. So whichever number is lower, should be 25% up to 5. Secretary of State finds any issues where the outcome of an election has been affected or the voter has been disenfranchised. Secretary of State partner with that local election officials to help plan to correct those issues and will provide additional training. The Secretary of State will have to announce who these counties and precincts are 90 days prior to the election. They also, in this section, in lines 76 through 90, indicate what it is that the Secretary of State will be looking for. And right after line 90, it states that Secretary of State will provide an audit manual to tell the counties how they're going to conduct
if a precinct that's selected has a contested election, then there will be no audit there. If there is a runoff in that precinct, then the audit will be put on hold, the runoff will be conducted, and then after the runoff, the audit will be. That's section 1. And section 2, we are repealing 2315-613, which is code that asks that mandates of counties turn in residual votes. Now, residual vote is an overvote or an undervote. Senator Blood was part of the Secretary of State when this was put in. I'm talking to him. This is just not needed now. When this was put in, you had several different machines that were used, and you have for overvotes or undervotes, depending what you use. Now, all of our machines have what's called a second chance vote. So whether you're still on the touch screen or if you feed your paper ballot to a machine, it's going to indicate to you, hey, you skipped this race. Did you mean to? And so that's not really needed anymore. In section 2, this is repealed as that. Section 3 is going to tie into section 5 on some of the changes early, but a change later on in line 269 is just indicating where election commissioner can receive money during this audit process. So right now we don't have election commissioners get paid a per diem depending on what function they're doing with an election. Right now we don't have anything addressing an audit. So that addresses the audit. 4 is simply brought forward. It has to do with our elections. I was asked to bring this forward. There are no changes, but just in case there do need to be changes, if this audit is going to potentially cost the county more money. And so that's why it's brought forward. Section 5 is essentially the voter roll maintenance bill that we passed out of the Senate 2 years ago. What this does is it codifies what a confirmation notice is and the procedures that go along with it. It lays out reasons why a voter would be placed in inactive status. Once a voter is placed in inactive status, they have 2 general federal elections to respond to a notice that will be sent to them, to vote, serve on jury duty, contact the circuit clerk's office. If they fail to do that, then that's 2 general federal elections of being inactive. They will be purged from the rolls. Section 6, which is on line 492, just bring forwards updates, some codes that deal with section 5. Section 7, which is on line 518. Last year, we had a citizenship bill that addressed a lawsuit that we were in. So last year, we were sued on how we handle registering our naturalized citizens. We passed a bill that got us out of that lawsuit, and at the same time, secured our photo rolls by another 3. What this is going to do is help and go in another step further. What this will do is this will allow the Secretary of State to do what we allow the clerks to do, which is to go into their what's called SIMS, which is their registration program, and be able to check with other databases to see if there's a potential non-citizen trying to register to vote. It does not give the Secretary of State any authority to purge the rolls. It just gives them the authority to use that system and then notify the circuit clerk of their findings. And lastly, section 8 it goes along with the idea that they can use SIMS to help find potential non-citizens, and also at the very tail end of the bill, we're just adding email addresses as things that cannot be asked for by a public records request. Explanation of the bill. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions of the chairman? Senator Hill.
On the last thing that you discussed by lines 591 through 596, what records are you specifically talking about that would be exempt from the Public Records Act, because you can go to the tax assessor's website now, you can look up addresses. You can look up voter registration. So what are you talking about that would be exempt from copying or examination of the Public Records Act?
Whatever documentation that they're using to show proof that they are, and so they're making something sensitive on there. It's just not.
Like a birth certificate or something like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? A few. Other questions? Senator Butler?
Yeah, thank you. I talked with, our circuit clerk and, and he thinks that the Secretary of State has never had any problem. Auditing in the books or doing anything like that. Why is this necessary now?
Because what it sounds like is your county is inviting. There's other counties that aren't inviting. And if we'll look online, 7639, okay? How did they test the equipment? They're gonna be looking for ballots. They're gonna be looking for ballot accounting reports. They're gonna be looking for still logs, poll books, receipt books. They'll be looking for absentee ballots, the application for ballots, the envelopes for ballots. They're gonna want to look for affidavit ballots, gonna look for the affidavit ballot envelopes. Those are all the things that they need to be able to provide the Secretary of State. And if your county's inviting, that's great. So that's good.
Yeah,
It's not, they do not have the authority to do it. And I think it's best that we do a pilot program where, it'll take further legislation for this to be into effect and to go to all 82 counties. But I think that this is a good start. And if a county can't provide, these things, then that's not good if someone wants to try to, challenge an election or secure the integrity of the vote of an election. These records aren't kept.
okay, was anything presented by the Secretary of State to show that there was a need for this?
I can hand off to the Secretary of State and answer firsthand.
Recognized.
Afternoon, I'm Howard Patrick, Assistant Secretary of State for Elections. We have received phone calls and Baltimore Parks where some things not intentionally, some things may have been missed. Affidavit ballots may have been processed or they were found later. Nothing that had ever changed the outcome of the election, but these things have been missed. We'd like to be able to go to go through procedural audit, work with them and help further train so these issues don't continue further. So there have been some issues that we've come up with that we've heard. Some of these were self-reported by the park team commissioners themselves. So we don't necessarily have the authority to always go in and open up their ballot boxes and do these. So this would allow us to go in, work with the parks, work with the election commissioners, ensure that they aren't going to occur in the future and add that to our training. So if another county, we could go in, see what's happening in this county, and take it back and we use it in our training for all 82. So this is something that we think will be very helpful in securing our elections and letting the voters know that if everything's going okay, everything's going okay. If there are issues, we're working on with the parks and commissioners.
Right. Do you have documented information to justify a need for that?
Well, because we currently don't have audit procedures, we don't have anything submitted. There have been challenges in the past, election challenges. Most election challenges are based on procedure. So I think if you could review challenges that are filed in law, because most of those aren't intentional, things do happen. Those are the things we would be looking at to correct those procedures that are being brought up in election challenges anyways. This will allow us to go in before it got to the point for an election challenge.
I can't see if that, where did you get your request to do it? Did you get it from the circuit clerk or who asked you to do this?
This has heard from some parks that are all for an audit system, pilot or whatever. So there's obviously the A2 clerks, A2 election commissioners. Some of them, come to us. This is something we've looked at, being able to help us with training. If an election challenge occurs, that's a little
too late. We'd like to be able to go in, use this for training and help, make sure this gets corrected before the point ever needs to get to an election challenge. We'd be able to help train on this issue well before.
Other questions? Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question and an amendment at the proper time. Mr. Patrick, does your office have any evidence of a non-citizen voting in a Mississippi election?
That's something I would have to review. I don't have any comparisons.
And you're the Assistant Secretary of State for Elections. Nothing comes to mind at this time.
That would be a criminal matter. That was something that AG would investigate. I don't think I have any complaints at this time. I'd have to.
In the 3+ years that the Attorney General's been in office, are you aware that she's brought any case in the state regarding voter fraud in 3 years? I have no more questions. I would like, when their questions are completed, I would like to offer an amendment.
Okay. Other questions on the bill? Okay, your amendment?
My amendment deals with section 5, specifically lines 439, 441. I think audits are good things. I think anybody can improve when they get somebody outside, come look at the way they do business. The vision of this bill, and Senator Branning's heard this, and Senator Tate from the Elections Committee, but the provisions of the bill that concerns me is the purging provisions. And my amendment is to strike lines 439 to 441. What the bill does is say, if you do not vote in 2 consecutive federal elections, you will be sent a postcard. And if you do not respond to the postcard, your name will be purged from the voter rolls and you will lose your right to vote until you register to vote again. And I believe the right to vote contains the right not to vote. And a person should not be purged from the voter rolls simply because they choose not to vote in 2 consecutive federal elections and don't respond to a little, government generated postcard. Folks who live in rural areas sometimes don't get mail at their physical address, the address that is required to put them on the voter roll so that they'll be located in the proper precinct. But most importantly, a person should not be purged because they choose not to vote. I know, and this came up in the Elections Committee meeting in 2008, when Barack Obama ran for office, a lot of people came out to vote who hadn't voted in a while. In Mississippi, most of our off-year congressional elections, the general elections, are sleepy affairs and they are not competitive. Congressman Plazo accepted, most of our incumbents are easily reelected without serious opposition every 2 years. So if, for example, you were not excited about the 2 presidential candidates in 2012, you weren't excited about Barack Obama or Mitt Romney, and you just decided to stay home. And there was, in 2014, there was a congressional election that was not competitive or even not uncontested. That's 2 consecutive federal elections, 2012, 2014. They mail you a card. You don't respond to that card. You come back to vote. You've been purged. You can vote an affidavit ballot, and that ballot's not going to count because you were purged in accordance with this provision. So what the amendment does is it leaves in the things where the voter has affirmatively done something. It leaves in subsection A. You've turned in a change of address form. Okay, that's some reason to check and make sure if you've moved or not. You've registered to vote in another county or another state. Okay, that's something that might indicate you're not living there anymore. Your mail has been returned. Okay, that's something that indicates you might not live there anymore. But the provision that would be removed under the amendment is we are not going to purge you for non-voting. So that's an explanation. And then, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Questions of Senator Blunt?
Move adoption of the amendment.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
No,
There are no no's, so therefore amendment is not adopted. Now, do I have any more questions on the bill? Senator Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does it cost any clerk's office more money just to have people on the rolls to vote?
Senator Tate,
Yes, ma'am, it will. Right now, there's provision that states how many ballots that have to be ordered depending on how many registered voters you have. And so yes, ma'am, it costs money.
So who is it? If this version of the bill passes and the card goes out, who is purging the roll?
It's the election commission.
And that would take place when?
And they have monthly meetings where they vote on whether or not something should originally be a monthly meeting, but now there's guidelines.
And you mentioned the procedural history of this particular law. I think you said it's passed out of the Senate
Yes, ma'am.
and it did not pass the House.
No, ma'am. Last year, something similar to it passed out of the House this year.
other questions?
Thank you.
If not, do I have a motion?
House Bishop be passed. Strike all.
Okay, first, adopt the strikeout. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. I have another motion.
House Bishop be passed. Strike all.
House sufficient do pass, strike all as a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Do I have another motion? Rise and report. Thank you all.
Oh, yes.
All right, you're fine.
Catching. Something saw you.